Hey, it's Chris. News! You ready for the news? You can't handle the news. Tabletop board game side of things, a little bit of everything. Retail, crowdfunding, upcoming, recently delivered, recently released, trying to keep you on the hotness without having to necessarily ride the hype train to Nowheresville. That being said, let's do this. What's first up? If you missed me talk about it earlier in the week, Marvel. More Marvel. Dice Throne. X-Men, right? We've seen X-Men now with Simon. We've seen X-Men with FFG. And now we're getting it over with Roxley and the Dice Throne side of things. And, you know, how do you feel about that? Getting the X-Men treatment. Now, my video earlier in the week was talking about the X-Men characters I wish we'd see versus the ones I think we're actually going to get. Your mileage is going to vary, but I think it's going to be very much like the core box of Marvel United. I think they're going to give us the ones that are going to be the most recognizable at a broad retail side of things. I think that's why we've got Marvel Avengers previously. Just like I said with Marvel's Simon, right? It was Marvel Avengers the first time around. It was Marvel X-Men the second time. This is going to be Marvel Avengers the first time around. Marvel X-Men the second time around. Now, yeah, some slight smatterings there, like Miles Morales instead of Spider-Man, but Spider-Man still is traditionally thought of in the, you know, extended Avengers. Anyway, getting sidetracked here. Kickstarter has been announced to be going next month on October the 17th. Apparently there was also on the release video, or on the hype up to the release video, there was some reaction videos from content creators being shown either X-Men or who are going to be, you know, so go check that out if you want. It's a good game. Whether or not it's for you, that's a whole nother issue, but it's, you know, 1 versus 1 King of Tokyo with dice. I enjoy it. We play it with the kids all the time. So that's first up. Second up, again, going to the future here. We're going to go over to FFG and Star Wars Unlimited. People are really hyping this one up on the heels of the Lorcana release. I mean, Lorcana is barely in stores and people are print and playing Star Wars Unlimited. Now, there's some rumors, unsubstantiated, of course, that, you know, you're looking at potentially like a Q1 release of 2024. March 2024-ish was sort of the rumor that was going around. Mechanically speaking, you've got the people that are saying that it's more complex, it's doing new things, and people like it more so far comparatively to the small smattering of Lorcana. But, you know, just like with Marvel Champions, you can't compare Marvel Champions, the core box game when it came out, to 3 or 4 years of Arkham Horror or 3 or 4 years of Lord of the Rings LCG, just like you can't compare, you know, one box set of Lorcana to other more long-lasting card games, like anything. Just kidding. But same thing with Star Wars Unlimited. So what you're going to do with it, what the follow-up is going to be, is going to matter more. So yeah, it's cool that people are proxying stuff, and there's channels already devoted to like FFG sending them a card a week along those lines. You can check those out online. But TCG model, though, apparently because of these IPs, is just getting a huge pass. Everyone's ignoring, for the most part, that it's a TCG model and it preys on FOMO and not getting what you want and having to mass buy these huge booster box sets and getting one card out of like, you know, $150 worth of what you want in the first place. So, because it's all chasing the grass is greener. Rant over. Dragon Eclipse, that's a whole nother issue too. That dropped on the day of me dropping my upcoming September video. That's launching later this month with slightly a different twist on the LCG things, which we'll talk about at a later point as well too, which I have mixed feelings about. As much as I like the concept of it, the execution has to be absolutely pitch perfect here, and I have no idea. Because I've just recently reviewed a video I did right before filming this one of a game that was pitch perfect in terms of mechanics, and when I actually got it to the table and when it actually got played, the things did not mesh nearly as well as I thought they were going to, and it was a little bit of a surprise, because otherwise, on the surface value, you would have thought it would have been an absolute smash hit for me. So that happens as well. The other interesting thing that just got announced in sort of the wake of some of these pictures over on the Dice Throne Facebook page was acute observers caught the fact that the team behind Dice Throne and the team behind Chip Theory Games, like, you know, were hanging out. And they had some spoiler pics of one of the upcoming Chip Theory games. There's not even a Board Game Geek entry at this point. There's not a page either at the time of me filming this. It's called Wroth. Yeah, W-R-O-T-H. No details, except like the pictures were blurred out of the actual board on the table, and it was all like neon highlight colors. Think Dungeon Degenerates, if you will, on steroids. Gameplay? No idea. Maybe more like Q1 2024 Gamefound campaign. Also, right after filming this, of course, Gamefound, Game Feast, Chip Theory, as well as Stonemaier decided to formally announce a lot of these. So now there's information on Space Bees in space, as well as the Chip Theory game smattering over the course of the next 9 months. Apiary now has a Board Game Geek entry, and it's a worker placement twist of making it harder to go to certain places if you've already got your worker bee colony space explorers sitting there in the first place. What is it going to entail? Is it going to be a little bit different or not? That's going to be the question. Now let's go back over to Gamefound, because the Gamefound Feast with Chip Theory, we talked about Wroth. Let me pull up the page real quick. Again, no details. 1 to 4 player, area control, Chip Theory, Manny Tremblay. Okay, 2,500 people following it at this point. Gamefound Spring 2024, 1 to 4 players in 90 minutes, midweight, everything of modes you can imagine. Okay, then we got Pandora's Box, the announcement for that as well, upcoming this week, before or after me filming this and airing it, depending on when this actually goes live. But 3 new expansions. One's expandable with Remastered, one's an expandable with Victorum, and one combines both. And do you really need all of those? I don't know too many people that are like, yeah, I have Victorum and I have Unmastered, and I really like both equally. And no, it would be like them putting out an expansion for Nemesis, as well as Nemesis Lockdown, and then one that was utilizable for both? Does that make sense to you? Doesn't make sense to me, but that's the second one. And the third one here, 20 Strong Tanglewoods. Again, Manny Tremblay coming over to the universe of 20 Strong and giving us 3 new mini expansions in a new universe from some line of Chip Theory. I'm assuming may have additional content later, but again, going to be launching sometime, early 2024. And in the comments, they actually say already that it's going later in 2024 because they want to be able to just basically turn around and print this with a reprint of the first 20 Strong stuff, as well as having this straight to printer so that the delivery might actually, gasp, be before Elder Scrolls in the first place, even though we're currently still waiting for the first 20 Strong editions to arrive. I say that as a, backer at this point, so I'm intrigued, but is it going to be what I want out of this? I don't know. I was really hoping this was going to be a cooperative or a 2-player mode to go along with this, because I'm not sure a 1-player game only is going to stand alone in my collection. So, yeah, Gamefound, kind of throwing some stuff out there. We'll see. The big ones get the big hype. How does that help everybody else, though? We'll talk. We'll see. We'll go. Now, going back to the theme of the last news video, we talked about a lot of sequels, expansions, iterations, and this segment is going to be dedicated to that because that's also a lot more of the announcements that have come out since last time. Ahoy, the leader game's asymmetric pirate ship faring travel around the sea with your little pirate crew, announced an expansion, sort of secretly, sort of under the radar, low key, which is going to be apparently going over on BackerKit. Again, interesting choice, because this was another game that, if you aren't aware, like, this got huge convention hype. And then after the convention hype died down and it got retail release, it kind of, woo! Speaking of the hype train, right? Not that it's a bad game, but it just completely fell off the radar. And it was asymmetric and people have liked it. I think it's got mid-7s rating over on Board Game Geek. Take that for whatever it is worth, right? But they're going to get an expansion, and Leader's going now to crowdfunding with it, which is interesting. If your base game goes to retail and your expansion goes, is there that much desire for it? I mean, I guess, if people are going to throw money at it and you can get an interest risk-free loan and not have to gauge what the retail presence is going to have to be like in the first place. Again, I never have problems with it from that side of things, but it just kind of makes me go, what's it going to do? What's it going to add? Is it going to add something that's going to entice people if they didn't like the base game originally? I have no idea. But BackerKit also, interesting choice for them, because BackerKit and Gamefound have, still, say what you will about them attracting big names, and they don't have the I'm browsing and I just managed to find this game in Backit cred. There's absolutely none of that going on in Gamefound or BackerKit. Almost all of it is, I go there directly for this. Because when I do my weekly roundups, you can't find things on their pages, even if you want to sometimes. And that's off-putting. And that's why you don't have a lot of that secondary, but apparently it's just much better for creators in terms of the cut. So, I mean, again, can't blame them, but I always wonder, how much are you gaining from this slightly less cut? And how much are you losing from the people that are just browsing Kickstarter, eager to spend money? Because I think you see a lot of that, and I've seen a lot of that with games that have ported over from Gamefound to Kickstarter and succeeded 2, 3, 4 times fold what they did on some of the other ones. So it's an interesting test of the market, and we'll see where it goes. The other one, again, sort of back to the 1 to 2 player, Black Rose Wars. Ludus Magnus, I ran across this in a Facebook ad of all things, is putting out a dueling 1v1 version of Black Rose Wars. How do you feel about that? It reminds me, the only thing I can think of off the top of my head similar is like when Cthulhu Wars did it, right? And that is not like Simpsons did it first, right? And a good prediction, but like Cthulhu Wars Duel was kind of, yeah. So Black Rose Wars Duels, I mean, the concept is solid. The biggest criticism of the base game of mage dueling factions on an open world map where you respawn and can't be knocked out is that it went way too long for what it was. And so if you have a 2-player version of it, a la maybe something like the one I have sitting up on the shelf up here, Disney Sorcerer's Alliance, Unmatched, something along those lines, an Exceed style, you know, that aspect of things. Obviously, probably maybe more like a Senjutsu, if you will, with a 3D element on the board, similar to maybe Ivion as well. Like those, that's what I would expect. But is it going to be portable if you've already got like the base game? Is it going to be just brand new factions whatsoever? It's also wide retail pre-order, not crowdfunding as well, which is an interesting twist from Ludus Magnus in an opposite way than what we just talked about with Leader. So what's that going to look like as well? I have no clue. Then we are going over here and we are going to see more Maracaibo. Pfizer? Yeah, we're getting more Maracaibo, only this is Pirates of Maracaibo. Now, this is a standalone game from the 2019 original, which surprisingly, when I looked this up, had 3 expansions? Really? Okay, you're going to recognize some of the concepts though, but multi-use card, pieces of maps that you're going to be slowly revealing, and you can, you know, as it says, jump right in without having played the previous game. The weight rating on Board Game Geek is less, but I mean, for a game that's unreleased, who cares what the rating is right now from a weight standpoint? 3 rounds, sailing the Caribbean, exploring, battling, allying, and just getting more treasure as you're trying to, you know, become the most revered pirate. Is it going to be as good as its predecessor? Is it going to appeal to the same people as its predecessor? Probably not, based off of the mechanical description here, but I have no idea because 1 to 4 players, 25 minutes per player, weight of 2.5 on Board Game Geek. Does that interest you as a Feister? That sounds light for some of his games comparatively from what I've read, not having actually played in the past. So that'll be an interesting test point as well. Then, let's talk about video games being ported into board games again, right? I called it here 2 years ago, called my shot. You're just going to see more of it. EVE Online Offline. The board game coming to Kickstarter. EVE. I mean, the spreadsheet version of a spacefaring game, essentially, is what I've heard it described as. Do you want that as a board game? How do you capture that as a board game? What's the other big spacefaring game with a lot of upkeep and a lot of resource tracking that also hasn't delivered on crowdfunding, that had a lot of people shouting from the rooftops from about 2 years ago? That one? That still is in the process of delivering? Yeah. There's a reason that sometimes these adaptations are a little easier to go board game to video game rather than video game to board game, because I don't know how you adapt all of those elements that are making EVE, right? As one of the classic all-time online multiplayer coordinated alliance game, right? How do you do that in a board game? How do you make that not Twilight Imperium upkeep level and play length? I have no idea. I mean, miniature heavy, I'm sure. Should it appeal to you at all this point? Are we starting to see the saturation on the video game side of things? Probably not, but I'd like to think that we're being a little bit more selective with our backing and our money right now. So if you're going to do it, you better do it darn well. So we'll see. Now let's jump over to the hotness here for a second. The hotness is occupied by mostly the recently arriving as well as the recently releasing. So at the time of me filming this, one of the top ones is Voidfall from Mind Clash. 4X, cooperative, competitive, solo, Spirit Island in space, only heavier. It's being delivered right now. How do you feel about that? Do you regret it? That's one of the few I actually regret not backing. One of the few that I'm looking at now and going, maybe I should dip my toe into that, you know? Unconscious Mind, Wayfarers of the South Tigris, getting into that side of things. And so it's on my radar more than I thought. Does it change your mind now that you're looking at it, now that you've seen other offerings in similar spaces come out? Terraforming Mars, the dice game, is also out. I'll have a review coming out of that shortly because as a Kickstarter backer, I got it. And you know what? I freaking like it. It's a good game. Doing something, and this was the big concern, right? Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition, the dice game. Can you have all 3 in your collection? Yeah, you can. They're all three different enough. Now, what mechanism, what approach you prefer for the Terraforming Mars aspects of things, that's where your modules are going to vary. But I can play Ares Expedition and Dice Game equally separately in my collection, no qualms about it. And I think people are going to be pleasantly surprised because it's the one that's going to be by far and away the easiest to teach from a mechanistic standpoint. Absolutely fun game. Harvest is over on crowdfunding. We're going to see what Harvest does as sort of another in the line of agriculturally themed games that are coming out with a worker placement element, with multiple ways of farming, seeding, watering, upgrading your capabilities, and trying to be the one with the most points at the end based off of the vegetables you're sold. Again, when I covered on the roundup, it's doing a couple unique things, but also as a non-Euro person, sometimes it's hard for me to see how different those things are in the vast sea of Euro similarities. So take that for what you will. Go check it over on Kickstarter, though, if you're interested in the first place. Then over being released right now from Capstone Games, Age of Innovation, the sequel, successor, I guess you might say, to Terra Mystica and Gaia Project. It's set in the Terra Mystica world, only it's like Terra Mystica with more combinations. It takes a few of the elements out. It adds a few slight different elements. It gives you combinations on combinations on combinations that no one's been able to meta yet, even though they've been playing it online for months before the physical release. And we're going to see, you know, how people feel about it comparatively to the other two namesakes that I already mentioned. Do they like it more or less? Can you have, just like with the Terraforming Mars situation, all three of those, two of those, only one of those in your collection? That's the fear with a game like this. Terra Nova, I don't think, has hit quite as well as they were hoping initially, as sort of a lighter version, a la like the dice game I just mentioned. But I also haven't seen a whole lot of traction either way with it. So we'll find out in a couple months. We'll find out in a couple years, maybe. Then some of the other hotness now is going to start to be slowly occupied and invaded by upcoming Essen announcements, Essen releases, and Essen hype. And the first of these is Knar, I believe, Knarr, a Viking-themed, exploring the new destinations, activating your crew with asymmetric powers, and utilizing the effects that are available to you to, you know, do the best you can as you explore the new world and trade. Not a whole lot of details known at this point, but we'll see where it goes. The White Castle from De Beer, a little bit lighter than, say, something else they put out recently like Jerusalem or Bitoku. Something where you are going with the Himeji Castle, a Euro-type mechanistic approach with resource management, worker placement, dice worker placement as well, over 3 rounds, where you're tending gardens, defending the castle, right? Like both of those things go back to back, and also trying to progress up the social ladder of the nobility at the same time. Again, as a convert to something like Bitoku, which is, I believe, sitting right back here, yes, and Jerusalem, I am actually vastly intrigued by this one. This is probably one of my most interesting Essen releases that I think would stay in my collection at this point, not just hype releases in the first place. So if De Beer can knock it out like several of these other games on the heavier side of things that they've done over the last year or two, I mean, they've got a good pedigree going on, especially with the more recently released 3-Ring Circus at Gen Con. Solid and broader mass appeal. It reminds me of Roxley in a way. De Beer, very, very solid now, coming to just the retail side of things as well, which again is very surprising, but also good to see. The other Essen slow creep release that we're seeing a little bit more of, or at least I would think, from a worker placement standpoint, is the Rats of Wister, where you're a rat trying to escape the Winster Institute and the experimentations that go along with it. You're trying to build beds, solve missions, excavate, and build new inventions in order to escape in the first place. But again, nature, animal, agricultural themed games seem to be all the rage right now, and so they seem to get a little bit more hype and click, and that's kind of on the hotness right now for that reason as well. That's about it for the news. A little bit of everything. Again, lots of content from crowdfunding coming over the next 2.5 to 3 weeks for me of upcoming campaigns, including the stuff in the background right here, as well as one right here and 1 or 2 still yet to be named and determined. So let me know what you want to see about that. I'm doing a new format. I'm getting rid of the long format. I just can't do that. You guys, not a big fan of the 20-minute reviews, so I've got one upcoming that's going to be a triple review in 10 minutes. So 3 awesome indie games that should be on your radar, all in 10-minute span, giving you my thoughts, opinions, hype, and I'm talking super fast because that's what I do. And then I'm going to go to mainly a pro-con based, just straightforward 5 to 10 minute video on a lot of these as well, I think. Because, you know, why shouldn't you buy it? Why shouldn't you get it? Why should you get it? All of that stuff, and we're going to go that route as well. And I still have a couple other videos sitting in the queue. retail from this last month, things you shouldn't buy, right? As well as my lookbacks for August and upcoming lookbacks for September. So a lot of stuff upcoming. Not enough time in the day. That's all I got. Stay classy. Have a great freaking day. Let me know what you think. What I missed in the comment section. As always, let me know below. Have a great day. Peace out.